Hey everyone, welcome back to TRCOA's Behind the Groove seminar. I am Ben Kliever and I will be taking you on another lesson today. Today we are going to be talking about Ableton's Vocoder. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you where to find it, how to use it, and then we're going to blend it into a track here. This is actually one of the songs that I have been working on, so haven't even released it yet. It's all done, but I'm about to release it here shortly. But has a bunch of vocoder stuff in it, so I thought it would be a good example for y'all to actually see and hear the vocoder, which we will get into that a little bit more. So again, welcome everybody. Feel free to introduce yourself as you come in, and you can ask questions. Feel free to comment too. Like the more y'all comment, the more I can kind of go off of that as well. If y'all think something sounds cool or sounds weird or whatever, just let me know, and we can just kind of discuss as you're going through that. What's up, Kayla? What's up, Michaela? What's up, Corey? We are going to dive into vocoder. So what is a vocoder out of the first place? A vocoder is a vocal synthesizer that works off of frequency bands, and we use those bands to make the sound. The most famous artist to use vocoders that you hear in their stuff all the time is Daft Punk. So if you've heard any stuff like One More Time or any of their big stuff, for some reason I don't know why I'm blanking right now on all their old big hits with with all that stuff, because I've listened to them a bunch. But like when you think of One More Time or any of their classic stuff that they're doing, Harder, Faster, Stronger, any of that kind of stuff, they're using vocoders, and they're literally dialing in the melody of what they want these vocals to do. So it's a cool modern, robotic, synthesized, tuny kind of sound that we can use. That's, it is a specific sound, but it's good to know how to use it, because I won't be honest, for like whenever I was first trying to use vocoders many years ago, you drop a vocoder on a track and it doesn't do anything unless you're linking it to other tracks and making it sound like you want to. So we'll go in and I'll kind of show you all that stuff. So this lesson is going to be inside of Ableton. So Ableton's for those of you who may not use Ableton or have not used Ableton before, Ableton is another DAW. It is very much based with MIDI. With MIDI tracks, it's one of the best at that. You can use MIDI and everything, but that's the big draw to Ableton, is being able to use MIDI and all their really accessible automation lanes that you can draw super, super fast. So this is Ableton. For those of you who have not seen it, hey Errol, good to see you in here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just take a quick listen to the intro of this, just so y'all can hear what we're working with and kind of what a vocoder sounds like, if y'all don't know what a vocoder sounds like on any of that information. So we'll just kind of take a quick listen to kind of the intro part of this track and just kind of hear the vocoder come in, and then we'll go into talking about the vocoder. So here we go. And this is going to be one of my songs that's coming out, like I said, really soon. It's called Out of the Dark. Haven't even released it yet, so y'all are just getting to hear it a little early. So we're just going to listen to the kind of the master that's underneath it right now. Got a little build up before the vocoder comes in right here. After this little section, you can see I got all my sections labeled and stuff up here.
I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone, and I'm falling apart. Can you help me? Can't escape in the dark. If I can find the light, it'll be a good start. I'm down here, I'm down in the dark.
So that is just kind of a vocoder sound going into what a vocoder is. You can hear it's this very synthesized, almost robotic kind of sound that you can dial in, which you can get some really, really cool effects to mix into songs. So we're going to kind of go up here, and that just kind of had a master of the track down here at the bottom, so y'all could just get a reference point of how this is going to be sitting eventually at the end of this. We're really going to just be diving into the tones of this, so I have some instrumental tracks that will go in, and then we'll really talk about the vocoder. Just so y'all know, I'm going to turn this down because it's going to be a little bit louder without a vocoder on there. But this is just kind of like what the raw vocals going like without it.
I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone, and I'm falling apart.
So we're going to take that vocal, and then that's what's going to turn into this, to this.
I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone, and I'm falling apart.
So that's what we're going to be going towards right there. So first, we're going to really dive into the vocoder. So first things first, how do we get a vocoder on the track? So I just have a little bit of compressor already set up on here, just so I have some compression on these vocals, so it's a little more level going through the vocoder, because the vocoder can be a little jumpy. You'll see whenever I go in there in a second. But inside of Ableton, this is our browser window over here to the left. So if you're just kind of basics around Ableton, we were going to find vocoder in audio effects. So just, this is where you do all your searching through Ableton. And at the very bottom, you're going to find what is called vocoder. So we're going to go ahead and drag this out directly onto the track I want. So I want to be on the lighter lead vocal, which is what we're going to look at here with the vocoder. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it out. And this is what the vocoder looks like. So we're going to listen to this voice just by itself first, because there's quite a few different settings in here, and I want to go through all of these individuals, go through these settings. So the main goal I want y'all to get from out of this is to know, the tools of how to use this vocoder so you can shape it to what the tone is in your song. Because the vocoder is going to be, if you're not shaping it to like other sounds or going towards the melodies of your song, it's not really just going to fit if it's something you just drop in. So, and I'm about to show you how this is all going to go through and what's going to go on to that. So let's do an overview first, and then we'll look about how we're going to go about routing the vocoder through our session. So over here, this is going to be remember how I talked about frequency bands? Over here, this is going to be all our different bands that are coming across whenever we have a vocoder on. So this is the sound you first hear whenever you have a vocoder go through, and you're going to be like, wow, this doesn't sound like what was just going on before. It's not melodic, and it sounds pretty crazy. And you're like, wow, that does not sound melodic or like anything that I'm trying to go through with my vocoder. Now, if there's something that you're trying to do with some crazy sound, we're going to go through these different carrier types, and this is what's going to really show us, really determine what the sound is that is changing the voice, changing the vocal to. So first, before we go about setting it up to all the other routing, let's talk about these first settings here, just so we can kind of hear some of the sound. Actually, we'll go in. So this is, and just point out all the things. So this is going to be our carrier, which a carrier is what the vocoder, the vocoder requires another source to drive what the vocals being ran through it to do. So there is some built-in ones that are inside of vocoder, which are noise, modulator, and pitch tracking. And then we have another one which is external, which this is going to be the big one that we're going to use to route and change the change the pitch and the key and make whatever melody we want for that. Yo, what's up, Cody? Good to see you in there. Howdy, howdy. So we're going to start with, we're going to go through the internal ones first, just so you can kind of see what this is going to do with these sounds, and then we'll really dive in to get into the main sounds for the rest of the lesson. So we're going to start with with noise, which y'all just heard. So it's just going to be very white noise getting pumped into this thing here. And we can, filter modulate it around, make it sound different. So you can really, modulate and kind of move this around. This is like our FM slot over here, where we can drag this around, and we're just modulating the sounds that we're listening to. Now, below this is a bunch of unvoiced noise that goes in, that pumps in when I have more melodic stuff. It's going to add more, more of the white noise behind that as well. So we'll just kind of blend it in just a little bit, so I can just at least hear what it's doing. So it's really adding in this crazy high-pitched sound, which in noise and all this, this would be almost be something that you were layering or doing something weird for like an audio movie or something like that. Like, I mean, if you were doing more noise, this is where really the bands can come in. You can shape the sound a little bit more, especially something that's harsh like what we were listening to right here. And you can kind of tell, you can hear, like this is basically the frequency spectrum that we're looking at from low to high. And we have the ability to choose how many bands we want. The more bands that we only have 4 bands right here. So I'm just gonna kind of go across real quickly so y'all can see there's a bunch of different little bands that we can. And the more bands we get, the more detailed the vocal is. So the less bands we get, the more like inaudible it's going to be, and the more bands we add, the more audible it's going to be. So that's what's happening in this range. We'll get into some of these other little settings. We got the bands, we got the frequency range that we can cover in here. We also have our filter bandwidth and how wide each band is. We have a selection to go between precise and retro, which is more modern and a little more classic. We also have a gate that we can use as kind of a threshold to make the band even tighter, and then we can actually push a little more level, and then we'll go into format control, dry, wet, depth, and all this kind of stuff here in a minute. We'll get into these settings a little bit more. So we listen to noise. We just heard white noise. White noise is just kind of, you know, it's just kind of there, makes it kind of crazy sounding. So that's the noise segment of this. We're going to do external last because that's what we're going to be doing the main part of the lesson on. You have modular too, which is just controlled by the actual modular part of this, so it's going to sound really weird.
I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone, and I'm falling apart. Can you help?
And the more we kind of move the...
Escaping the dark, if I can find the light.
So it's, you know, it's kind of modulating it just a tad bit. Thanks, Corey. and that's something that's just, you know, kind of gives it a little bit of a filter if you want to.
I'm down here, I'm down in the
but then any band we draw is going to.
I'm all alone, and I'm falling apart.
So we can make it really dark if we want to roll off the high end, or if we don't want any low end in it, we can more draw the low end out of it, make it very bright. And just automatically, if y'all notice, like once I'm inside the bandwidth, it just turns to a pencil, so I can draw this stuff wherever I want. Any line I do, it automatically just does that. So that's very cool and nifty on that front. And we'll be able to hear the band difference when we really get into the external stuff. So this is the modulator section, and then lastly is a pitch tracking, which this one is pretty crazy. I mean, you'd have to really fine tune exactly what you're wanting to do with pitch tracking because it does some pretty wild stuff, but I'll let you all hear right here because it starts pitching this thing kind of crazy.
I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone.
So I'm basically just moving, you know, I can physically bend pitch, like bend the pitch of my voice across this thing.
I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone.
Which, that's why I'm saying, like, you can see the second that I'm moving these pitches to different frequency ranges, it's changing the key. So this would be something you would have to be super, super precise and have a little bit of trial and error until you get to the exact point. Or you can look up, if y'all didn't know this is like, I have a chart in my room that I made that was like, if you go look up, like you can look up individual notes and where they at, and they absolutely have a frequency spectrum. Like if you know, like the low E on a guitar sits at 82 hertz. So like that's where that sits. So the more that you, and then a low bass, I believe on the bass is like around 40, somewhere right in there. So just, you can actually look up and get the exact numbers, and you could actually draw stuff with like sine waves or signal generators and use the exact frequency range of a key, and it'll be dead on. But that's something you can certainly look up, is frequency ranges of notes, and it'll, you know, starting from like A0, which is the lowest, all the way up to like A6 or A7, where it's starting to get real high. So each number after a letter, if y'all didn't know, is just the next octave up. So the pitch tracker, again, pretty crazy. So
Down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all
we can change
alone,
square wave.
falling apart.
You can-
you help me in escaping the dark if I can find the light
And like, see, like the more you throw in the unvoiced, you can really get some crazy, crazy sounds from doing this vocoder the more you play with it. So the unvoiced, again, it's gonna low in like the actual unvoiced. The sensitivity right here is the split between those two. So like at 50%, it's kind of blending them together, like a mix of it. Just think of this like a mix knob between the unvoiced and the vocoder. All the way down at 0, it's all vocoder. All the way up, it's all unvoiced.
Down here.
And then all at 0, there's no unvoiced.
Down here.
So it doesn't do anything. So that's just kind of the general overview. Fast, this is just how quickly the unvoiced thing is catching. You have quick, fast, or slow. So that is all the pitch, that is the main, you know, internal ones. But the big thing we want to talk about here is the external. This is the thing that we want to do that is going to let us make the sound of however we want this to sound like. So you've noticed on all these other ones, like we have an FM thing on noise here where we can draw around. Modulator takes everything out because it's just modulating to what is here, and we can just turn some of the other knobs, and it's kind of like a filter basically. Then pitch tracking opens up and it gives us frequency ranges, a little bit of different oscillator shapes over here, and then it actually gives us a pitch knob here that we can turn pitch on. This side stays the same the whole time, and the actual vocoder frequency band spectrum stays the same in all modes. Now when we go to external, we see it changes and it says audio from. So now we have an option to actually select where the vocoder is taking its information from. So when you see when I click on this, it's actually going to show me. I made this session very simple because I didn't want to have a ton of tracks in here, and those of y'all who do use Ableton, switching from computer to computer with Ableton, sometimes you can lose some of your samples, and that's the only reason that I printed all this down. So I want to make it a simple session. We have vocals and then the instrumental here. So when I open this, it shows me all the tracks that are in my session, like all my lead vocal ones that are down here. These are just ones that I had that are older. And what this requires is, let me show you one other thing in this song so this makes sense. Like I got to send this to a track that has a piano roll on it. So like when I'm on a track, like let's say I'm on this track, like we have a piano roll. Let me open this so I can actually see a little bit. This piano rolls, the velocity is super big, whoever was using this last. Let me make that a little smaller. Cool. So that is we have to, whenever we're using this external thing, we're sending it to another track, and that track that has that information looks like, basically we're going to send it to, this is the synth pad that's going on in this song. Ooh, that's super loud. That sounds crazy. Why is that so loud? That is crazy loud. Let me turn my... So this is the riff that... I turn that effect off because I just have that effect going in the mix, but I don't want that crazy tremoloing happening while I'm going on here. So normally what I do is I usually take the pad, something from the song that I'm liking, unless I'm going for a very specific sound, and then I can take that information and I just copied the MIDI track and my actual pad sound down onto this. Now we'll listen to some different sounds here in a minute, because we can make it sound like whatever we want, but we have to send this information to one of these tracks. So I duplicated my pad track here and I moved it down to a track that I called Vocoder Trigger, and then I just disabled that so I don't actually hear that track, but it's still picking up the information in the vocoder. So I'm going to go down here, pick audio from, pick my vocoder trigger, and now we'll listen to this section right here. Now you're going to hear that it's going to play these notes and what this pad sounds like for my vocals. I'm kind of rolling off a little bit low end. So now that I've got this set up to go to another vocoder, you know, into a lane, now I'm actually getting the sound more of what I want. Now we're going to go mess with some other ones here in a minute, but that's the basic thing here is we got to send this to another track. Now below here we have the option to do pre-effects, post-effects, or post-mixer. So pre-effects would be, you know, if anything you have on the track. So like if would just be what this instrument sounds like. Post effects would be with the filter, or if you had a compressor, or any extra sound design that you're doing on the actual vocoder trigger track. This is also why I like to put it on its own track, because it's likely I'm going to do different processing for the vocoder trigger than what I'm going to do for what the actual pad may be doing in the song. So I want to have the ability to be able to manipulate that to exactly what I want for the vocal and it not affect what the pad's doing. So if y'all have any comments or questions as we're going along, just please, you know, just type in there and I will chat it with you. So let's go back to our vocoder. Another really big thing, now we're going to kind of look into more of these effects, like all the knobs that are in here, which makes this a little bit easier for us to get the sound that we're going for. So first we'll just talk about the bands, because that's the most visible thing that we all see here. And we're going to go through, the more I said, the more bands you have, the more accurate it gets. So for this song, I ended up choosing around 20 because I wanted it to be there, but not completely. Because I wanted it to be a little bit, you know, a little bit muddled on purpose before the real vocals came in. But let's say like I start all the way back at 4, which 4 bands, like we're going to hear, you're not even going to be able to hear my words, so. And it's peaking just a little bit. So whenever you're hearing that little like glitchy effect kind of going on right there, where it feels like it's clipping a little bit, that just means that there's too much volume going into the, like too much gain going into the vocoder, and that's why it's making that kind of clippy sound. So. So now let me switch these bands back so we can go through. So we got 4, 8, 12. You can hear we're getting more detailed every time I go up. So now we have tons more bands here. Now, just so you know, like just the more bands that you end up using, if you run into this with your computer, it's going to be more detailed, but it's just going to make your CPU work harder, just kind of like any other plugin or tool that you have. Like the more advanced or more, you know, high quality you push that plugin, it's always going to push your computer harder. So, but we have way more exact frequency control of what we want the vocal to be shaped like. So we took a little bit of the low end out. Now with this, we'll kind of listen. Let's do like that 40 sounds good because we have all the detail right now. So we have precise mode, which is kind of modern. Then we have a more retro mode, which is just not quite as bright as the other one. So retro, precise, which I kind of like. I kind of like the way the retro feels on this one. It feels a little bit smoother because it's not doing quite as much like trying to be as exact as the precise one is. So I just kind of like the way that that's sounding. Above that, we have our bandwidth, which this is showing how wide each one of these bands is. Like you can hear so this is widening it, and then as I get down here, it's really thinning the spectrum out, and it's making these kind of weird, almost like just tones. It sounds like a theremin almost. It's crazy. So it has this is where we can control more of how wide all the bands are in here. Then we can actually control the frequency spectrum of what the vocoder is right here in the range. So we can go way lower, or make it way smaller and tighter. However, in Ableton, just so y'all know, anything you pull up, you can double click on any band or knob, and it'll always go back to the default spot that it started at. That's just with any of this stuff. So now the next thing on that we're looking down here is the gate, which this gate's gonna kind of set the threshold for, you know, it's going to do these other little things that are like you're going to see, it's going to start gating out bands that aren't crossing a certain threshold. Only the strong bands are going to come through. So as I go up, you're going to see it's going to cut them out. See how it's only picking up certain bands now? So that just allows us to really, all this stuff is going to be just for super fine tuning your vocal and what you're trying to get it to sound like in your head as you go through it. Now, another really big thing that as we go through, I want y'all to hear this too, like depth is is we have enhance over here, which this enhance button, I chose not to use it in this song just because of the sound, but it's going to like normalize it and make it sound brighter, but sometimes it doesn't kick out as much. So again, this is going to be something you're always going to be using your ear about. So normal, then enhance mode. So it just kind of brings kind of a bell sound almost to it a little bit. So all of this is all just dependent on what your sound that you're going for. So now the last thing here, we got the unvoiced part if we're wanting to add in some more. So now I'm getting more, which adds a lot. And what this unvoiced stuff does is it almost brings like more sibilance to the words. Like you can almost hear what the person's saying a little bit more with them blended in. Now you got to be careful with getting it exactly right, but you can see like we can hear it, but the second I start bringing in, mixing some of this unvoiced, it makes the words even a little more clearer. So that's usually something I'm trying to think about too when I'm using these unvoiced. And then this is just how fast the unvoiced is reacting. So you hear how fast the unvoiced part's coming in. Can you help me in escaping the dark if I can find the light? So that is now another really big thing. This is something you almost want to do every time you're using this is this depth knob over here. Usually, just from what I've worked with this, usually between 100 and 120% is kind of your money range that the vocoder is sitting in its best like working spot here. So let's just take a listen real quick. And then the more, you can even go backwards this way, it brings it more to the low end. And this is more high frequencies, so it just depends how thick or how thin you're trying to get it. In solo right now, the depth on the low end part sounds good, but then sometimes in your track, a lot of times what I'm fighting with the vocoder is when I'm on here is all this is controlled with what we're doing from the sound here. So like if you have a bunch of low end building up from your source that's sending to the vocoder, that's gonna get in your vocals and that can get muddy and get in the way of low end of what's ever in your mix. So just always keep that in mind as well. We're about to go mess with some really more stuff. I just wanna make sure that y'all are comfortable with hearing everything we got in here. We do have a formant shifter as well. So we can pick the exact spot we want the vocal to sit in there, so we can make it super high, super low, which is cool on that front. You see, like as we almost get the attack super far out, it almost sounds like a reverby type of. And if you had like other vocals going on over the top of this could be a really cool effect. If you have a regular vocal going in front and then you have like some delayed vocoder going behind, that could be something that could be really fun to play around with. So that is the attack on that. The release is obviously the same thing. Dry wet is if you're trying to do like a literal blend mix between these. So we can almost hear the actual, like, you know, now you can hear with the dry wet knob at 50, we can hear, you know, what, because this is parallel processing at this point, so you can hear what delaying the attack is going to do if you had another vocal going on top of it. I'm down here. How it kind of blooms after it. I'm all alone, and or you can have it happen at the exact same time as a clean vocal. Help me in escaping the dark. I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all. So that would be, so just hearing how loud it was in that mix. So that's setting up this whole section, going through all our buttons. Now I kind of just want to show you how big of a difference what you do to the actual trigger track happens to this. So if we're just listening to this vocal, anything that I do to this effect is going to affect what I'm. So we can, I'm gonna open a new instance here so we can just pull up some other crazier stuff. So what I'm gonna do now is let me pull another VST in here that's got some bigger sounds, because this is more like what y'all will be using. For everyone that has Slate, this is built in. This is the Anna 2 wavetable synth. It's super big, it's super powerful. It can do tons of stuff. I mean, I know Serum's the big thing. This thing can do almost everything Serum can do. You got 6 oscillators and tons of envelopes, and you can make it do almost any sound you want, and you got it with your Slate bundle if y'all have that, if you didn't know. So now that I have Anna on here on this vocal trig blank, I'm gonna just go over here and switch my my input source to the vocal trig blank, so I can use this Anna 2 sound, and we can get some crazier sounds going on in here. So let's pick something poly. Poly means that it's getting, it's playing more than one note at a time, which usually works pretty well for vocals. Let's just see what Flute Man sounds like right out the gate here. I'm down here. I'm down in the dark. So you can see your vocal is going to take on the effect of whatever you're using. I'm all alone and I'm falling apart. Can you help me in escaping the dark? If I can find the light, it'll be a good start. So we can make this do whatever. Now another big thing, let's say I didn't even want to use those chords, so I'm just going to go in here and do something different just for fun. Let's say we were just doing some single note. Oop, let me do that again. I just want to make these. If y'all didn't know, you can just mute stuff, and I'm going to turn this on for just a second so I can. These colors are crazy. I'm going to switch this color because it's really hard to see. I just did that so I could actually see what's going on over here, because that was making it very difficult to see with it. And I make the vocal triggers and ghost, if I'm doing ghost triggers for either sidechain compression or vocoders or anything like that, I usually gray them out just so I know that it's not an actual live track in my session. It's something that's being routed to somewhere else. So now that I have these single notes, you'll see it'll literally just play single notes at a time, which is really crazy sounding. Wow, that's really loud. And let me turn that down some. The volume you have going from this track matters too. The more that I can control the level going into the vocoder from the actual track that's going in. So keep that in mind. If your vocoder is getting overloaded, or you need something, or it's just not loud enough pushing into the vocoder, go control the actual volume that the vocoder's taking all this information from. Now let me turn that off where it's. Let me see, I think I have to do it from the, I thought I could, because I was. So that's kind of, it's just kind of doing some funny stuff. Let me just pick a regular lead that's doing something normal. We're going to pick a bunch of notes just so you can really hear how you can push this. And this is really the big overview. Let's pick. Flute saw sounds good. It's something that's just not completely out of control. So let's go in here right quick, do a little extra drawing, because these are all doing the same thing. So now this is why it can get a little crazy if you're, timing's gonna matter on what you're writing on these things. I'm just gonna kind of do this randomly, because I'm just putting a bunch of different notes in here to give us a So you see how we can look like, you know, the more notes you put in, like if I was duplicating this and layered different levels, you know, like let me grab this thing right here, drag it out. And it makes me almost want to go back down right there. I kind of like that, you know, we're just messing with the melody right now. I just wanted to show you creatively how you can really get into See, I kind of like that little, it almost sounds like a harmony that I'm writing to what I was doing earlier. So, and I'm just kind of drawing notes in here. So we can, you know, we can make this do whatever we want. If we want to, I'm gonna duplicate these right quick. And let me unfold these right quick. And let me do a quick duplicate. And I'm just gonna take them up another octave just so we have an extra. Actually, yeah, this is a lead, so it's not going to be mono material. So I would have to go switch to a poly synth thing to do more than one note. So that, you know, this is, you know, really the big, like, this is the funnest part about about the vocoder, is really getting into, you know, designing the sound to fit your song. So the big takeaways from vocoder is, you have a bunch of internal stuff, but if you want to control the exact melody of what everything's doing and and make the melody do whatever pitches you want to do, going into the actual audio from track that the external track the carrier is going from, and changing that information and changing the MIDI notes drawn on it, changing the effect that's on that is on that. You know, and we could even throw on, I mean, I think if I throw on like some, you know, reverb or something in here, we could get a little reverb going on this thing. So now you can hear, like, even throwing effects on. So even with these, now it's you know, if I go back and we turn it back and I switch back to the other, I mean, we could try it with that vocal in there. I'm gonna get curious to hear what it sounds like actually. So. I'm down here, I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone. Like, so if I duplicated that, let me hit another note over here. Just gonna hit some random notes there. So then that's drawn in. So then, like, even if you had this here, you know, Command J, let me drag this out. And then if I duplicate that, Command D, now we got a whole little section with a new lead over it. I'm down here. I'm down in the dark, I'm all alone, and I'm falling apart. Can you help me? And escape in the dark, if I can find the light. So you can see, like, I mean, and this is what we're starting with, you know, it's just a sing vocal, so. And then if we wanted to go back to where we actually finished with what, closer to the sound of what I actually have, if we went to the other trigger, then you. So you can see, like, me actually controlling the volume on here is what's doing it. The more voices I add, all that stuff is controlled from your carrier. So overall, that is Ableton's vocoder. It's a super fun thing to play with, to get mixed in, blend into songs, you know, make very creative sounds and creative choices with it. That is the basic overview. So just kind of, again, looking over here, your carriers, the big thing. deciding your bands, how many bands you need, and what needs to be dialed in. I mean, really where I ended up at it, like it's like I ended up sitting somewhere around this area is what I just ended up sitting for this song. It's always going to be dependent on.
Down in the dark, I'm all alone, and I'm falling apart. It's standing in the dark. If I could find the light, it would be a good start.
So that is the vocoder in depth. If y'all have any questions about how to use it or how to go over it, please feel free to ask those now. But that is the big thing. It's really fun, and you can really go through and make it sound like however you want. And all right there, right at your fingertips. So thanks everybody for watching. If you are enrolled, please go to the seminars tab on the my.trcoa website and take the quiz over tonight's lesson. If you need to book any one-on-one time and have any questions, please, with me, just please reach out, send me an email or a text, and we can schedule a time. And if you aren't enrolled and want to learn more, please go to trcoa.edu to find out more information. And feel free to please post in the chat subjects you'd like to see in upcoming live streams. And as always, please subscribe to the channel. And we will see all you guys next time. Y'all have a good night. Later.